Admissions Masterclass today on the theme of how to nail your MBA admissions interview. Now, this is one of my favorite steps on the road to business school, because if you've been invited to interview, you are so much closer to securing your place, from having a 1 in 17 or a 1 in 11 chance from Palo Alto to Boston. Suddenly it's perhaps now 1 in 2, and I'm really excited by those odds. Now, to make sure that your chances are as strong as possible, we have a very full agenda for the next 45 minutes as we look at everything, the different formats of the interviews, and share the strategies that will ensure your success. I'm Matt Symonds, one of the co-founders of Fortuna Admissions. And if you're wondering why I'm so confident about this next step of the interviews, well, I'm joined by two of our superstars of MBA admissions at Fortuna. My colleagues, Michelle and Rachel. Michelle was a former admissions associate director at Wharton. Rachel is a Stanford MBA and also a former GSB admissions interviewer. And believe me, they have interviewed hundreds, perhaps even thousands. They can divulge that information themselves. Both, of course, interviewees for these wonderful schools, and then so many successful Fortuna clients that have been lucky to work with them. So we've got a lot to get through. And perhaps, Michelle, to get us started, that big picture question, right? In terms of the interview and what it is that the schools want to find out.
Yeah. So, well, first I will say to those who have received an interview, congratulations. Like Matt said, this is a huge step. So be excited, be positive. I'm so glad you're with us today for Rachel and I to kind of hopefully give you some tips and insight so you really feel prepared, not scripted, to go into your interview with confidence, and just knowing that your application itself has passed the first test, and now you get to speak with someone, and we'll go through alumni, AdCom, etc. So first, this is really your opportunity to show the admissions team, how you think and how you communicate, and really that you're a strong fit for their program. So what are they evaluating? Very similar to your application are the components we have on our slide here. Is to start with, is your leadership potential? I mean, you are pursuing an MBA, you are looking to be a future impactful business leader. So they're really looking for examples in your past of your leadership, of initiative. And really that word impact is important. And I believe that you probably have already done that in some way in your application and essays, just shown that impact. So remember, bring that to the interview. Next would be your clarity of purpose. Again, I believe you probably have already gotten over this hurdle, but now you get to speak with someone and communicate to them, really, like we say, coherently, like, why are you pursuing the MBA? Why now? And again, specifically that school. So if you haven't already, continue to do your outreach and research to really bring that thoughtful insightfulness about why you are excited about that program that you're interviewing with. And next is the self-awareness, is really that you have reflected and you kind of really understand and can share, if you're asked a question, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your growth areas? And why? What are you looking to do and why? Why are you passionate about it? So again, to show in communicating with someone else, your maturity, your thoughtfulness, and your insightfulness of really, how you go about things, how you make decisions. And then finally, your community contribution. All these schools, you are looking to get something from them. And more importantly, they want to understand what they're going to get from you as being part of the class, their community, and really long-term as an alum. So think of it that way, and that contribution. So again, their ethos on campus, their culture, how will you thrive in that? And where do you see yourself in a club, in taking on an initiative? What will you be like as a classmate, a teammate? What will you bring and contribute? Your perspectives, your thoughtfulness, your listening skills, and really wanting to jump in and be part of that community in that MBA program.
Rachel, I will be talking about all of these different formats across the top schools, but Michelle just made a very interesting comment. And as we think about round 2 applicants, they had a Harvard application on the Tuesday, and Wharton was on Wednesday with Booth, and then Stanford was on Thursday, and it was nonstop in the first few days of January. Tempting to perhaps sort of think, right, that's done. Now I can stop, catch my breath, which you certainly deserve to do. But Michelle was saying, keep researching, keep reaching out. Perhaps a conversation that you might have with an alum or a class president or so. Interesting to me that ahead of the interview, there's still a lot you can be finding out about the school.
Yes, definitely. Those conversations with alumni or current students in particular. And when you have those conversations, sort of really ask specific questions about particular clubs, particular activities, particular classes that you think might be interesting to you, and try and really understand, well, what are you actually learning in that class? What does the club do? What are some examples of speakers that they've had come? What are some of the projects that they have taken on? So that when you get to the interview, you can talk in a really knowledgeable and thoughtful way about the school, about the community, about the program. Another great question to ask is, well, what do you think is distinctive about this school? What do you think stands out to you about this school, so that sort of from the horse's mouth, what are some different things that will resonate with your interviewer and really ring true about the school for them?
Right, and how that sense of interest and alignment can then shine through in the interview. Perhaps just a final thought, Michelle. Again, having put together essays that had word limits and making sure the recommenders were submitting, and then things slow down. But you're talking about that clarity of purpose, that self-awareness. So is there a sort of a shift that says, I've done all of this introspection, working with either of you or other Fortuna colleagues, we've put that together for the application, and now I need to bring that with me, ready, to perform on interview day. So getting your head straight, ready to share that sense of self-awareness.
Yeah, I say, what I tell my clients? I go, reread your application. You've taken a break. It was a lot going on at the beginning of January. Now you have earned and you have gotten over that hump of the interview invite. So go back and reread your application. They liked what they saw. They loved the story that you shared. And that's what you need to bring to the interview. And to your point, Matt, without the word limits, that you can really expand and have a conversation. And we'll talk about that, Rachel and I, is conversational in really bringing that thoughtfulness about who you are. And you don't have the constraints of a 450, 500 word limit. So, but it's really make sure, and we'll talk about also the different schools and interviews. Some are blind. They have not read your application. You are not repeating yourself. But at the same time, the ones that have read your application, they want to make sure you wrote that application. At the same time, the story should meld and you should bring more and build on what you've already shared. So it's really, again, being proud of yourself and being like, I'm going to prepare as I did the application by rereading it and then preparing my strongest stories. And we'll get into that. Like, what are you going to bring if it's a behavioral based question, et cetera. So, and I think if you have gotten this far, the self-awareness, you've done that reflection. Now it's a more of, okay, let me kind of just start practicing and, going back over my strongest stories and strategically, if we'll talk about this again, the interviewer is going to lead you in the interview, but where do I want to start if I only get asked 8 questions, right? Like, what would I want to lead with? So, yeah.
Well, Rachel, working with you, I always get the sense that you're about 5 steps ahead of me, sort of anticipating, thinking, and knowing what to expect. So now let's take this deeper dive and the different formats that any of our viewers might then be facing.
Sure. So the first one is alumni interviews. And as Michelle said, these are often blind, which means that they only have your resume. That's the only information they know about you. But I should specify that is for the US schools only. European schools are somewhat different. INSEAD, for example, they've read your application in addition to your resume, but not your essays. And then LBS, they've read everything, your application, your essays, and your resume. So do check for your school. But in general, for US alumni interviews, it's just a resume. And just in terms of, I'm going to give you a little bit about what is the format, what do these interviews look like? For the alumni interviews, they're one-on-one. They're usually either at your interviewer's office or in another public space like a coffee shop. And the time frame is typically 45 minutes, but I have known interviews to run to an hour and a half. It depends on the interviewer. It's somewhat idiosyncratic. So kind of just be prepared for anything in that time range. And then once again, depending on the school, you're going to get potentially a mix of background questions, behavioral questions, and then fit questions about how you fit with that school. Admissions-led interviews are somewhat different. They are sometimes one-on-one, but Harvard Business School, for example, if you interview in person in Boston, they're usually 2 people. And then they're 1 person usually if you're either interviewing in person in a satellite city or via Zoom. And they're a much shorter time frame. HBS is 30 minutes. MIT, which is another admissions-led interview, is also much more concise. And what's different about these interviews is that every interview is unique. You cannot find the questions you are going to be asked on the web because they make them up for you based on your application, your essays, your letters of recommendation, your resume. So you need to know that walking in. And then finally, Michelle is obviously going to talk more about the Wharton team-based interview, but I'm going to give you just a quick preview of the format. It is conducted via Zoom. It's typically 6 applicants. There's a pre-assigned prompt that you have time to prepare for ahead of time, and you get 35 minutes with an initial presentation of 5 to 6 minutes, 25-minute discussion, then a 5-minute final presentation, and then finally a 10-minute one-on-one post session with one of the people who observed your interview.
Right, right. Now we're going to be looking at each of those and trying to put our viewers in the room and ready to expect. But just perhaps a couple of thoughts. Michelle, for the admissions-led, Rachel had mentioned it might be 2 people, and that might feel unsettling. But for all of this, do you feel that, that the interview process is giving you a platform, whether it's alum, whether it's admissions-led, whether it's the TBD at a school like Wharton, they want you to shine at this moment, right? That they're not setting you up to fail.
Absolutely. That is such a good point to make, Matt. And I tell my clients that's why I say this is your, like you said, your time to shine. You are your biggest cheerleader. And they are looking to get to know you better off the piece of paper. Again, they get to interact with you. And how exciting is that? So again, be excited. And sure, there's going to be nerves. I absolutely understand that. They understand that. So take the deep breath, but go, again, that's why we're going to try to help you prepare so you feel that confidence going in. But their biggest goal is to understand who you are, what you've done, where are you headed, and what do you hope to accomplish? All those questions, right? And the point is, to your point is they want to get to know you better. So they're going to ask questions about you. And as I prep my clients and we do mock interviews, I would hope you could speak about yourself pretty knowledgeably if they really ask you a pointed question, let's just say even about a bullet point on your resume, right? So, but it is a preparing, to Rachel's point, understanding the school, 2 people in the room, 1 person, how the alumni base go, like, and just, are there behavioral based questions? But it's so really preparing in your knowledge of that school so you feel good going in. But again, go in and speak, the truth, answer 1 question at a time. But really you are there to step away. I will say this, Matt, when you leave knowing, again, you know what, I feel like I really got to present myself in the best light. And that's at the end of the day, all you can do. And that's what we hope as coaches at Fortuna really want to help you prepare and feel that way, no matter what, even if you're given a question that you need a second to think about it. And we have that in one of our slides. Take that second, do your best, and then move on, right? We're all human, right? So it's going to be great. Like, smile, have your bottle of water, as I tell my clients, and, enjoy this part of the process.
Okay, there's only one thing, if I may correct you. I have seen you being the biggest cheerleader for some of our clients, but it's just filled them, ready, confident to go in there. And perhaps, Rachel, given that you've interviewed so many candidates on behalf of Stanford, the sort of the blind format also makes me sort of think, are the alumni blindly chosen, because of geography, or, that, hey, they could get together and have coffee? Are the schools really thinking about who they've chosen as ambassadors and therefore interviewers?
I would say, first of all, I can't speak for every school, but there is definitely thought that goes into who you are paired with. Sometimes geography is the most important, and it's just based on who is close and who can do that in-person interview. But when they have a chance, they do tend to not necessarily match people in the same industry, but match people who they think are compatible. Stanford, for example, has about 500 interviewers worldwide, and they know the interviewers and they know what they're like. And they will sometimes try to put you with somebody who has that industry experience, or just somebody that they think you're going to hit it off with. So there is some thought that goes into that, yes.
Right. Okay. Well, let's look at that alumni-led interview, Michelle. Perhaps also the fact, finding out who will be interviewing you is one of those elements, right? There's some good research that you can do there.
Actually, absolutely. That's what I was going to say. I would say start with, you are, like Rachel just pointed out, depending on how you are paired, every school is different on how they do that. Most likely you will be given the name because you have to set up the interview, etc. So yes, go on LinkedIn, very easy, right? Everyone does. Get a little background. What industry are they working in? You know, what year did they graduate? All that in information is just going to help you as well be comfortable going into the interview, as well as, you know, having a couple questions prepared for the end of the interview. And I would say the alumni interview, as Rachel, you know, went over, is, you know, these people love their school, right? Like they have volunteered their time to be part of this process. So it's very meaningful to them. So for me, that's why number one, you need to show your enthusiasm for their school. So make sure, again, going back to have done your research and being really thoughtful and appreciative, I always say, also of their time. And that's just showing your gratitude with this simple thank you email, LinkedIn note afterwards. So everybody remember that, take note. I always make sure I remind my clients because we sometimes forget. But in that interview with alum, again, let's let your personality show. And so really going through this slide and kind of what works and, you know, what backfires is the, you know, for, I would say all the interviews, you're going to want the crisp 2-minute-ish, you know, kind of elevator pitch of walk me through your resume. Tell me a little bit about yourself, right? And to Rachel's point as well, the alumni interviews might have different formats, being a blind or not. They have read, you know, parts of your application if it's US based or one of our global schools. So just that should be a very easy, where do you want to start with your background? I practice with my clients. How far back is it from the decision where you went to undergrad to what you studied, to then bring them to what you've been doing professionally, and obviously the focus on where you are at now. And then again, thinking about, usually the alumni interviews, like Rachel also said, are less standardized. So you never know where they will go, but usually definitely be prepared for those open-ended questions, behavioral-based questions. So that's where I bring in the, what are your strongest stories? Team example, leadership example, biggest failure, you know, proudest accomplishment, right? Like kind of go over those. Again, we have a set of questions that we can throw so many at you, but it's like, what stories could you bring up from work with a difficult team member, right? And you kind of want to practice those and think about how would you, again, present those. So, you know, what did you do? You know, why did you do that? How did you think about it? What was the impact? So kind of thinking about those examples for behavioral-based questions. And finally, again, I would go back to this engagement. It is professional. I will say most alumni base are very conversational. Again, if it's at a coffee shop, they could be 45 minutes. They really like you. They continue the conversation. It goes longer. But that's why I say bring your personality, who you are, and just to really share as much as you can in that time frame with this alum. What backfires, what might not work, it is, I would just say, is you're too polished in practice, in the sense of, because you are so nervous and therefore it is pitch mode and you are scripted and you maybe are a robot. I have no idea, but like, relax. Like, we know you have prepared, but let's, again, let them lead you in the questions, be as relaxed as possible. Talking points rather than, that's the thing. I tell my clients as well, you never know what the next question is, but only answer the question they've asked you. Don't add on to it, assuming. I'm like, again, sometimes they do have a bit of a scripted, they need to ask you certain questions, but it's also their interview to lead you. So just keep that in mind. And again, vague claims for the next one. So this is where you've prepared concrete examples and stories. You don't just say, I'm a great teammate, I'm a collaborative leader. but can you please show us how you've done that? And again, depending on the school and the essays you've written, maybe just even across all the schools, you might have even written some great examples to show how you've, been collaborative, how you dealt with a difficult situation, a challenge, etc. And the last one, which is tough for some people, is the rambling. First with the opening, tell me a little bit about yourself. That's why you do kind of need to practice and make sure time yourself. It's not good, doesn't go out too long. And also if you are one that you feel like maybe you just keep rambling and don't know how to end your answer, that you are mindful of that and you also practice concise answers. They can have follow-up questions, etc. So, but the alumni, I mean, again, I just go back to, they are volunteers. They have absolutely loved their experience, at that school with that program. So bring that enthusiasm yourself to the table and enjoy, again, the experience.
There's a word I love to hear. Enjoy the experience. As high stakes as it is,
Yeah.
we're able to capture that. There's a word, Rachel, that I'd like to carry through from this slide as we then move to the admissions-led interview. Michelle had talked to us about that crisp walking through of the resume, crisp, and perhaps even an indicator, no more than a couple of minutes. So as we look at this one, being thoughtful about time management, not going on for 7 minutes, going down this particular rabbit hole, but ensuring what is sort of a pace so that you get to cover, plenty of diverse subjects and discussions.
Yeah, so I'm just going to start there. The most important thing about this HBS or MIT interview, because it is so much shorter and they have a particular agenda of what they want to get through, you can't prepare for the particular questions they're going to ask you. You have no idea, but you can absolutely prepare answering lots of different questions in that 1 to 2 minute time frame, potentially even less if it's a short, quick question. So I just want to go through a little bit about the expectations for this interview. First, you should expect that they have thoroughly read your entire application. The questions are for you, and they're going to be probing. So they're focused on the same information as the alumni interview, but the way that they phrase the questions is very different. It's not, tell me about a time you came up with an idea. It's, what about this project that you initiated? What gave you the idea for it? And then you increased sales by 20% once you initiated this. Why did that happen? And those types of much more specific pointed questions for you. I also want to just give you a caution to expect the unexpected. I had a client who grew up on a farm, and the first part of the interview was talking about the farming industry, agriculture, totally unexpected, but once again, this is your background, this is your life. You should easily be able to handle these questions because they're really talking about things that are, important to you and fundamental to who you are. And then the third thing for these interviews is, I would say, you want to research more than just your application and your background. You really do need to be familiar with what's happening in your current industry and your current company and your potential future industries and companies. These questions do still have a general format that you can look at, and I think it might be helpful to just explain that. They fall into sort of 4 big groups, even though they are very specific. The first is the reasons behind your choices and goals, so a lot of why, and explain that.
Mm.
The second is your accomplishments, your challenges, your learnings, your growth. That's all of that impact behavioral stuff that you'll see in alumni interviews in a very different way. Then the third would be like your thinking, your analysis, and your industry knowledge. So, getting at that. And then finally, HBS related questions. So if you are able to answer questions in all those 4 areas, you'll be in good shape. The way to prep, once again, Michelle talked about this, for these schools, you really have to reread your application thoroughly. And you also need to stay on top of industry trends and not just kind of regurgitating what's in the Wall Street Journal, but being able to add your own perspective, your own expertise, your own insights and thoughts about what's happening. And then on a practical perspective, get someone to review your application. This is something Fortuna does, but you can also have other people do it, and come up with the questions that they would have after reading it. And then just practice those 1 to 2 minute answers. You're going to get different questions in the actual interview, but you'll know what 1 to 2 minutes sounds like. You'll know how to give those clear, concise answers. And then finally, just identify key weaknesses or issues where they may probe, and just make sure that you have a reasonable answer. There are people, they just want to get to know you. They want to understand you. And that's what you're there to communicate with them.
You remind me of my 6-year-old that asked me the other day when we would have dinner. I said, "Oh, in 2 hours." And he looked at me and said, and how long is that exactly?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you need to know.
yeah, I love this idea of
No,
getting a sense
this
of
is,
what 2 minutes, and it feels like I'm running over, and
yeah.
yeah,
Or what 1 minute feels like, because maybe some of them, you want to know, depending on
yeah.
the type of question.
Well, with the focus, Rachel, that you've given us on Sloan and HBS, of course, that have this format. At Sloan, we talk about, what is it, menace and manus, of mind and hand, and the idea of theory for practical application. Of course, Harvard, so well known for the case method and being cold called, being able to, say something insightful and contributing to the discussion in 60 seconds. They're hearing you speak. So presumably this is an element of the interview to then sort of project forward and picture you with that industry analysis and sharing insight that would be of genuine value to the rest of your class.
Yes, absolutely 100%. I think people get so caught up in thinking I have to prepare answers, and they forget that what they're really looking for in a lot of these interviews is not just what you've done, but also how you think on your feet, because that's so crucial, not just to success in the classroom at these business schools, but also success in your career. You really you need to be able to think on your feet, and practice thinking on your feet and being able to spontaneously answer any different type of question in order to, I think, make the most out of these interviews.
Yeah, and of course, as we move to the TBD, I'm just reminded that it's you thinking on your feet and not an
Yeah.
AI machine doing the thinking for you. This is highly personal, and there's a group involved in the team-based discussion, which introduces another dynamic. But again, each of the individuals that's operating within that group. So, Michelle, tell us more about the TBD format.
Yeah, so Rachel did the high level overview earlier. And to her point, thinking on your feet, I mean, Wharton introduced this now 10 plus years ago, and it is really to simulate the learning team model that they have at the school. And what is it going to look like and feel like if you're a part of a learning team? Now, it's a little more difficult because you're thrown together with brand new people that you've just popped on a screen with and met. But it's really a fantastic exercise, which is why I will say it again, Matt, I want my clients to enjoy they got here. There is maybe a little more difficult to prepare for this type of interview, except that you will have a pitch that is based on the prompt you are given that year that you need to come to and have thoughtful, understanding of, what you want to bring to the team. But it's really this, how do you listen? How do you collaborate? And how are you going to contribute to this problem solving? You are given a problem, this prompt, what they want you to accomplish. There's different deliverables and the outcome, and then you present it. And the goal, again, is to see how do you interact with your peers. And so this, to Rachel's point, and to your point, is, this is really your opportunity to show and present and showcase your professional presence. How am I in a team meeting at my job? What role do I play on a team? Am I that person that, makes sure that I keep the ball rolling and that I bounce back to different people? So to kind of go to our slide, if I look at that now, it's building on each other's ideas. So you start with everyone will give their pitch, and then you guys will then the group will jump into this 25-minute exercise of discussion, right? To, again, come up with an idea, present it, and, have the different deliverables. So it's kind of hard. As I prep my clients, and I'll give you my tips, is as you come off of all those pitches, where do you begin? So it's who is that person? Do you want to be that person that jumps up and be like, kind of maybe, go overview? of what all the ideas were that were just given. How do we want to break out our time? How should we think about, the different things that we need to accomplish and problem solve to get to the final answer to present? And again, it's a big task in 25 minutes, but it is usually you will have 2 moderators that will be watching you. So they will not interact with you. They will give you the instructions at the beginning. They will set you on your way, put the timer on the screen, and then pop in at the end for the presentation. So they are watching you. And to my point is, they really want to understand what would you bring to your future learning team? How did you see that Rachel really hasn't said much since her pitch? Rachel, I would love to hear more about again, throwing it back to her. If there is a dominating voice in the group, how do we be like, Matt, I loved those ideas. I just want to kind of hear what everybody else has to say. And I was thinking if we wanted to make sure we, really close the loop on this so we can move to the next thing, and so you kind of think again about how you would, show up and work with those different scenarios. So same thing like the interviews, like Rachel said, you can't know what all the questions are going to be. You have no idea what the dynamic of your group's going to be. And I will give my other tip is, it is the success of the group that is your success. So I want everyone that is a Fortuna client, that I run our mock team-based discussion, mock sessions, is show up prepared and ready to work with the others. So your group is successful. Is that right? Because I understand that you all are very like, I need a spot in this class, X, Y, and Z. There's 900 spots. You all are bringing something different. You all have different backgrounds. So if you can shine as a learning team and as a group, wow, well, who knows, you could admit every single one of them. That's not the point of this exercise. So bringing your best self to think about, I want to contribute. I want to listen to my, team members. I want to help us problem solve, keep moving the ball rolling, keep the ball rolling, knowing what the time is. The time could jump up on you. So again, someone is keeping note of, looks like we already are 10 minutes in X, Y, and Z. And again, if I look at the slide that we put together, pulling in the inclusive leadership, really being disciplined. Now, what backfires? Okay, this was the easy one, right? Like, I think if I talk the most, I am definitely going to get the most points and they are going to remember me. Probably not, right? Like, so winning the exercise versus enabling the team. Winning is thoughtfully listening, pulling in each other's ideas. If your pitch is not chosen, you throw it away immediately. Because again, even if it was chosen, doesn't mean that means anything. It's more of your group decided that this was the best one to go with to jump off of. I will say another tip is I see many pieces of different team members' pitches being brought together, and the thoughtfulness that you all bring. And again, this is really reflective of, if it's HBS, is thinking on your feet and being mindful of asking follow-up questions, or even questioning. I see people in the mock sessions that we do, asking a follow-up question and even having them clarify. And that just brings more understanding and clarity than for you all to put your answer together. And again, overcorrection is saying too little. Definitely have seen that happen. And wanted everyone, I will say, show up on their best behavior, right? We all want to be the best teammate, but make sure that you aren't too quiet, that you do insert yourself. And sometimes it's 4 to 6 people. And if it's the 6 people, it's, 6 people, you don't want to speak over each other, but I think you all are on your best behavior and 2 people speak at the same time, one person then goes ahead and then you throw it back to the other person, right? Like just, again, so we do mock sessions that I think are very helpful because I think it gets the butterflies out and it gives you a better sense of, this is how it could go. But at the end of the day, you don't know who the other team members are. But if you can prepare of showcasing your collaborative leadership, facilitating the discussion, and really allowing others to share their ideas and really making sure, I am someone that is going to bring my perspective and my understanding, but more my wanting to ask questions and come up with great ideas and all those things is really the Wharton. They feel like it's been successful. They continue to use it, followed by the 10-minute one-on-one with one of the moderators. But it's really let's see how this goes and how you would, show up as part of the Wharton community.
Yeah, this idea of putting yourself in the situation to understand the dynamic, as fun as it would be to go with 5 friends to a bar, that will be a very different conversation and focus. I also love the shifting in mindset, and you're not walking in saying each of these individuals is my competition for a place, but actually, all of us collaborating, we're all going to get a place, and how that would empower the interview. So whether you've grown up on a farm, Rachel, or been working in financial markets, this idea of behavioral questions, not are you behaved, but to take us through some of these examples so that our viewers can really understand what they're looking to discover and how you can share that narrative.
Sure. So I want to talk a little bit about Stanford and other alumni schools because a lot of schools use behavioral questions, but Stanford's interview is almost exclusively, except for maybe a question or two at the end, behavioral questions. So it can be a little different, and Stanford, you might not get asked, tell me about your resume. You might not get asked, why did you choose this job? You might not get asked any of those background questions. And that is actually what you are supposed to not be asked. That is the way the interview is supposed to go. But one of the things with behavioral questions is some schools and some interviewers might ask the question. And when I say behavioral question, it starts usually with, tell me about a time when you had to come up with an idea, you worked with a difficult person, you had a leadership challenge. I mean, there's a million different variations you can see on the internet. And some people who ask these questions are just going to ask the question and they're going to move on. And in that case, the STAR format can be really useful for thinking about how to answer it. And once again, you want to keep the answer to about 2 minutes, and you want to talk about the situation or the context, then go over the task, or like what was the problem that you were facing, what steps did you take or actions did you take, and then finally, what was the result and your impact. And that is a great way to answer it if it's one of those interviews where it's question next, question next. But Stanford and a lot of people with behavioral interviews, the point is actually to go way beyond that initial question. And you might get asked that question, tell me about a time when, and then have 15 follow-on questions for that one question. I've seen in a Stanford interview, sometimes they'll cover 4 to 6 different sort of main questions. I've seen times I did a mock interview with somebody, one question, we spent 45 minutes on that one example. They had 2 years that they've been working on this just amazing project. The entire time was that. They went into the real interview, exact same thing. One question, the exact same initial question. And then that interviewer had their 45 different questions that they wanted to know for follow-on. So keep that in mind. And the good thing about how to prep for this is that because of those follow-on questions, it really turns into a conversation super fast, at which point you don't have to have anything memorized. The best experience, I tell people, like literally the best experience for some of these behavioral interviews is your work experience and what you have done and who you are. That's the most important thing. Now, having said that, what do you want to do to actually prepare to explain this in the most effective way possible? It's really having that 3 to 6 or 7 different stories or examples that are mostly professional, maybe extracurricular if you've really had a leadership experience in an extracurricular activity that really exemplify some of the following that exemplify all of the following characteristics. The first would be the leadership, your interpersonal dynamics, how you manage situations and people effectively. The next would be challenges, difficulties, conflicts that you have overcome to succeed. The next would be your problem solving, your analysis and strategic creative thinking times when you've shown that. And then the next would be your impact and your accomplishments, and particularly times when you have had an impact that somebody else wouldn't have, and where you've contributed something that goes above and beyond what you were expected to do and really stands out. And then finally, your values and your personal character, if you have stories that really reflect that. And to reiterate on something Michelle said earlier, go in with this list of questions and stories in your background. Maybe go back and reread old notes or emails or presentations that you put together, just to kind of refresh yourself on, oh yeah, that was what my recommendation was, and that was the analysis that I uncovered, if you have access to that information. And then when you're in the interview, make sure you choose the example that really fits the specific question that they ask. That is so important.
Right. Of course, we're all now wondering about this candidate that you'd read the room so well and focused on that particular area of their experience. And that was exactly what was then reflected in the interview. As you think about stories that any candidate might have prepared, if it did stay on a particular theme, could it then be to explore these dimensions of leadership and conflict and failure? Because there are so many different angles that could be approached.
Oh yeah, sometimes people ask about just one example because they've gotten everything they need to know from that one example. You've shown like the range of types of conflicts and issues and ideas and sort of characteristics that they want to know that you have, and so the interview's done.
Yeah. Both of you are reminding me of the power of the interview. If I had read everything that both of you have shared, of course it would, there's so much insight, but both of you bringing it alive, and you know, they've read the stories on the paper in the applications, and you're just reminding me how powerful an interview could be. So knowing your story, perhaps, Michelle, that's where we'll go next. And again, putting those pieces together within the time that is permitted.
That's exactly. So this is the core narrative. Most likely you've presented this very well to get to the interview in most of the school's applications. I will say there's some, schools that don't necessarily specifically ask you this, but if nothing else, you have come up with these answers, right? And this is now, again, your time to think about, how am I going to structure? I'm going to be asked, why an MBA? Why now? Why the goals and why this school? How am I presenting that, communicating that in a very concise, answer with proof, and then obviously specific to that school. And I think Rachel's going to get into more specifics on our next slide. But this is really, again, your opportunity, again, depending on the school you're interviewing with and how much you've told them about why are you pursuing an MBA. What is your plan for the future? You really want to show them how an MBA is going to, or you're going to want to present how the MBA you believe is going to help you prepare you to achieve these goals that you are setting for yourself. What is the problem you're trying to solve? You get to discuss with them. Again, hopefully there's no word limit now. I know there's no word limit now. And you get to really, tell that story. You need to be specific to, okay, the MBA is I need these skills, this new knowledge. And you really need to go into the depth. So really thinking through, how did I already present it in my application for this specific school? And just in general, when I get asked this question, most schools, with the exception, of some, to be prepared to start to share that, what your thought process was, and really, to my point, the number three, why this school is the most important to then nail. You have to nail all of these, and then specifically going way back to the beginning is the school, is the outreach and the research that you've done on that school to really understand how the experiential learning opportunities, the classes, the professors, how they align with your goals, and how they're going to really prepare you and launch you into the next step in your career. And like I said, I think Rachel's going to get, I don't want to cover too much, but really this genuine enthusiasm for pursuing an MBA, specifically at that program, at that school, and the clarity of purpose of what you're hoping to pursue. If you're changing jobs, industries, where are you headed again? And, what are you hoping to accomplish?
Yeah, and just before we move on, Michelle, with so many years of experience, working as some senior admissions at Wharton, great candidates applying to several schools. So that the why MBA, why now? Were you mindful they could well be applying to schools in New York and on the other side of the country, for you to really feel the enthusiasm and to be able to articulate that for the school?
Absolutely. I will say I worked there so long ago that we did not have the team-based discussion, that we did the general admissions interviews as Rachel went over. So I got to sit down in a room and interview. The thing that just kills me, I loved the candidate. They've answered my questions. I got to the why Wharton, and it was like, wah, wah. I was like, you haven't done your homework. You can't, again, show me that enthusiasm for my program. Like, I want people that want to be here. You could be stellar, but if you're not excited about, again, and what you would then bring to our program, and given that you have, I see myself getting involved in this club or this initiative or doing research here with this professor, it's a killer. I mean, and again, I'm hoping that if you have put the time and thoughtfulness into these applications and you have gotten to the interview, that you will bring that thoughtfulness. I mean, actually, I'm not surprised that people don't, but it's a reminder right now to everyone that's watching this to do that. It is a key factor if it's an alumni-based interview, an admissions interview. And you're really doing yourself a disservice in that sense. Just if you think you're amazing and you're a wonderful candidate and that's all you need, it's not, in my opinion. I don't know.
Well, that's a bit like that final sentence. That in one sentence, you could go on with supporting proof, but I think we understand that one. Just this ability to anticipate, and both of you, as you walking us through our ability to imagine these different scenarios. So we've prepared the core narrative, the things that we're likely to need to share, but then equally, Rachel, some of the core questions to anticipate. So take us through these.
Sure. So Michelle has covered some of the things, but I'm going to just try and give a couple of tips for each of them. Walk me through your resume or tell me about yourself. Once again, concise, concise. That's true for all of these very standard questions. And what you should do is you should focus on what's not already on your resume. Don't say what you majored in. Say why you chose to major in that. Don't say what you did at your job. Say why you chose to do that job so that you're giving them new information and not boring them. The second is why MBA, why the school. And as Michelle said, you've got to be specific here. But one thing you should also do is try to tie it back to your needs and why it matters to you. So don't just say, oh, I want to take negotiations. Explain why that class is important to you, maybe with an example of a time when you needed it, or something in your future industry that you know about where you're going to use it. That specificity is going to make it much more interesting to your interviewer. Short and long-term goals, same thing. Tie it back to why this is right for you. Make it personal. Just a couple sentences on what you want to do, but the why is the most important part. I think we've already gone over really these leadership conflict questions. Those are the behavioral questions where you really just want to know your examples. And then finally, for community contributions, to be specific and know their names. And then once again, it's tying them to you and why they matter to you. So either your past, something you've done in the past that, I love this and I want to continue doing that. Or if it's something new, tie it to an aspect of your personality. So for example, maybe you grew up in a hot weather climate, but you love trying new things and you're a huge athlete. Well, so then say, well, that's why I want to join Tuck's Ski and Snowboard Club, and make sure that you know that it's Tuck's Ski and Snowboard Club, not just Tuck's Ski Club. Know the actual names of the programs you want to join, know what they're like, know about them. That's where if you have a chance to talk to alumni or current students, many of whom are open to cold outreach, that can be a great way to get that information.
Yeah, it strikes me, the interview, the wonderful place we talk with our clients about, talking perhaps to the second year club president of, a particular club that you'd love to contribute to. It speaks exactly to this theme. Sent in the applications, you've still got these 4, 6, 8 weeks to continue researching, and the sort of calls that you're suggesting with current students or alums could all play out in the interview. So we can never be ready enough. Michelle, it feels, Michelle and tough questions. Did you ask tough questions?
I don't think so. That's what I mean. You said, Matt, way back in the beginning, they're not trying to throw you off your game. They are trying to get to know you. But at the same time, I have definitely had clients over the many years get a question that maybe they just weren't so prepared for, right? In the sense, and that's okay. My biggest tip is pause when needed. You can take that breath and, depending now if it's via Zoom or if you're in person, but I think the thoughtfulness you can bring to answer that question that might have just stumped you for a second, or you're just not quite sure how you want to answer it, give yourself that moment to think, take the drink of water, and then give a maybe concise answer so then you can move on. I will also say to tough questions is, maybe you gave actually an answer earlier and you want to kind of circle back to it even. And Rachel probably has had this experience. Like maybe that's you actually thought about, you answered something and you didn't love your answer. Like, again, just the being, conversational and not so, I mean, some of them are rapid fire and you don't have a second to think, but most of them, you kind of have that moment to kind of reflect, like, I kind of wanted to circle back, but same with a tough question. So again, here's some tough questions. Now they won't be tough for you because you can, think about how you would answer them. I mean, I will say I always have my clients prepare, give me 3 strengths, 3 weaknesses. I mean, even those things they don't think that they might get asked. And I will say you might get asked. What's a piece of constructive feedback you've been given and how did you react? And so sometimes you like, wait, I need to kind of let me think. And then again, take that moment, answer it, and then, show again maturity and and again, it's that thinking on your feet and how would you answer it and handle a tough question, do your best, and then they'll move on to the next question. So don't let it overwhelm you, right?
Yeah, all of these techniques which people will be able to take through with them. We're shining, but perhaps that acknowledgement Michelle had recommended, Rachel, just the mistakes or things that perhaps in the moment you feel are undermining the interview, and how you take that breath and come back. But talk us through, what can go wrong.
Yeah, these are some of the big things not to do. And the first one is these generic claims without proof. We always say show, don't tell. Do not say I'm great at communicating or presenting. Instead, give a specific example of what you said in a presentation that shows how you were great at communicating or presenting. And then another one we've talked about a lot, but it is so, so important, is avoiding sounding memorized or over-scripted. If you have to practice so much that you get to the point where you have memorized it and now you can throw it away and just talk, then that's what you need to do. If you're somebody who is able to bring that piece of spontaneity to it, then that is really, really helpful. I know this is so hard. And to some extent with questions like walk me through your resume or why school, they're going to give you a little bit of a break. They know you've prepped those, but you want to try to keep it as conversational as possible. And one of the things that I used to hate, was a dead giveaway, is when people say, well, I want to go to this school for 3 reasons. 1 is this. And I'm like, no, just drop the 3 reasons and drop the 1. Say, well, I really want to go to this school because blah, 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 blah. And they also have, it's just a much more natural way of speaking. And then also about that being flexible, being prepared for follow-on questions, being ready to have them test how you think on your feet. And also just know, like as an interviewer, if somebody starts to sound scripted, I will interrupt them and I will start asking specific questions in order to knock them off that script. And I actually think this does the interviewer, the interview and the interviewee a service, because it becomes a more natural conversation and they're just in the moment and they start actually thinking, and that shows what we're looking for. So don't be alarmed by that. That's their job and that's what they're trying to do in a lot of interviews. And then Michelle and I have also talked about this, but you have to answer the question that they ask. And you need to pay really close attention, because they may ask you to specify a time the past 3 years. And that amazing example from college you were going to talk about, gone. You got to come up with a new one. Or maybe they're going to add a detail you're not expecting. They're going to say, tell me about a time you worked with a group of difficult people, not a difficult person. Also, gone. If you start talking about a difficult person, they're going to be like, this person wasn't paying attention. And that's going to be a real red flag. You need to let them control the interview. And sort of related, we've also talked about this, like, you know how politicians, they sort of have their talking points, and no matter what question you ask or get asked, they kind of go to their talking points. That is the literal opposite of what you were supposed to do here. I don't care if you never get asked about that amazing project that you wanted to talk about. If it doesn't fit any of the questions that you have been asked, you have to let it go and trust that it's somewhere else in your application. Always choose the story that best fits the question that they asked. And if you really genuinely don't have something, maybe you've never worked with anybody difficult, they've always been lovely, then maybe say that, be honest. but say, look, I've never had this, but I've had a time where there was a conflict and that caused some tension, with these people that normally I get along really well with, and ask them if that is what they would like you to talk about. So really address their questions. And then just a couple other points: over indexing on achievements, spending too much time talking about all the great things you did is really going to turn an interviewer off. You want to show what you did, but with appropriate reflection, without sounding arrogant or bragging. um Weak school research, I think we've gone over this a lot, but I'm going to agree, this is just a kiss of death. If you don't get asked, great, but if you do and you don't have really good specific answers. And then pacing, rambling answers going on forever. My rule of thumb is, if you were talking for more than 1 or 2 minutes, you are 100% for without a new question or an interruption, 100% going on too long. And when in doubt, just take a pause, take a breath. Don't just keep talking. Just, okay. And then see if they jump in with a new question or a follow-on question. Sometimes people get nervous and they start, blah, blah, blah. Try to just add a few breaths. And then finally, at the very end, you want the questions you ask the interviewer to be thoughtful, not to be confrontational, not to be critical, but to be good, sort of about their experiences, what they felt was valuable. Back to what Michelle said earlier, do research your interviewer, but make sure to only ask them about specific things that are on their LinkedIn. You do not want to be showing that you have stalked their Instagram or their Twitter feed or any other information about them other than, I'd say, LinkedIn and maybe like their company profile and bio. So just be a little careful about that.
Right. I had said at the beginning of this session how excited I was to be talking about strategies for the interview. And there are 3 reasons. First, no, I'm just messing with you. I got that advice, Rachel. We're not going to break it down into 3s. One of the reasons that I was so excited is because it was the 2 of you. And right now I feel so pumped up and so ready for an interview. I have to be at the airport in an hour. And I'm going to engage with security. I'm going to engage with the customs officers and see where those conversations go. But thank you. You've covered so much ground. And viewers, whether you're watching this live with us, of course, all of these sessions are recorded and then shared on the Fortuna YouTube channel. This is what you can expect, to be put in that room and carefully and thoughtfully shaping that narrative, thinking about how you'd respond. Both Michelle, Rachel, our other colleagues, this ability to hold up that mirror. This question is going on too long. Let's take that breath. So, we have interview preparation at Fortuna that covers all of the different formats that we've discussed, whether it's those 30 minutes with 1 or 2 admissions officers in the Harvard Dillon House, or the alumni interview with Stanford that could be taking place in that cafe or airport lounge for 120 minutes. And certainly for the TBD, we have sessions that you'll be able to sign up for to really, put you through those experiences. Lots of realistic simulations. That typifies, what I describe as Fortuna's dream team. You can imagine how incredibly privileged and fortunate that I feel. Years of working with Fortuna, but each of these masterclasses, so much insight, keeps it incredibly fresh and stimulating and exciting for me. So you can only imagine the sort of insights that they can bring. And we've got all the schools covered, our dream team, whether for Michelle from Wharton, Rachel with her Stanford background, but team members from Harvard and Booth and INSEAD, LBS, all of these great schools. And of course, we hope that all of you have this wonderful offer of invitations that are coming up very soon. These are the team members that have been in the room, been asking those questions, the tough questions too, and then able to provide the feedback of how you might want to frame that particular response, or the pace that you're using, or let's go here and see how you could open it up and expect not just one difficult person, but a difficult group. It's anticipating all of these things, as you've seen in the last 45 minutes. So whether it's checking out some of those YouTube videos, but reaching out Even in our calls, Rachel gave the example. It's not that you studied economics at this school, it's why you studied economics. For any of our initial free consultations, we have really taken time to look through the resume so that the discussion that we have, it's not an interview, but we really want to find out a path that you've taken, choices that you've made, and obviously where business school fits into all of that. A quick Q&A. One of which I think we talked about these 3 different formats. One of our viewers fairly early on had asked about the Columbia interview. Michelle, any quick comments about Columbia and how we might approach this wonderful New York school?
Columbia is a wonderful New York school, and I know the interviews are beginning or coming out, so it's very exciting. I will say it is normally, again, if it's with a student or with an alum, they're actually kind of mixing it up now. So it used to be very alumni based. I think now they have more second year students as well doing the interviews, conversational, really kind of a typical, walk me through your resume, why MBA, why Columbia, why goals. And, so it's a nice mix. And the number one thing I'll say for Columbia, my little spiel is they love the love. They love it. They want to know why Columbia. That one you got to nail. Maybe this was back in the day, Matt, like only a couple of years ago when it was the rolling. So it was, it was different and it had a different feel. And now they're back to rounds like everyone else. But it is a New York City. Like they know they're in New York City. Okay, new Manhattanville campus. Okay, like to Rachel's point, what about, is that for you? Are you going to thrive, reap the benefits, take advantage of being at the center of business? I can use all their taglines, but you got to know them, and you have to know why. So, but it is congratulations, have a wonderful time. Again, reread your application, blind interview. So you get to come, they have the resume and really discuss, who you are. And again, they have the 500-word goal essay, right? So you have done your job. So you get to bring now to this, you get to speak with someone and shine. So, great question, but why Columbia? You got to nail it.
Well, why London Business School? Juan has asked, and of course, with colleagues like Emma and Karen and Cassandra, they could
Yes.
answer that at great length. The international schools, Rachel, just any thoughts? INSEAD describes itself as the business school for the world. The London Business School has 70 nationalities in the classroom. Presumably, that is one element that the schools would love to see, that ability perhaps to work across cultures. But again, don't just say you can do that. Find that time that illustrates so powerfully your ability to work with different groups and different cultures.
Yeah, I totally agree. And even if you're somebody who doesn't have that exact example, maybe you are not somebody, maybe you're an American student and you haven't been abroad, or you're an international student, but you've really only worked within your country with people of the same nationality as you. Find something that is comparable. Think about the people where you have had differences with them, where there has been this diversity of perspectives, experiences, opinions. Maybe it's even that your job is very interdisciplinary, and you're working with engineers and marketing people and advertising people and having to get them all to work together. So find what it is that, reflects your appreciation for diversity. And also just even be, once again, always be honest about the fact that you haven't had this opportunity, and tie it to why you are dreaming of this exposure, why this is important to you. Even if you've never left your hometown, what it is that motivates you to apply to this school. And, there is going to be an answer, there is going to be a reason, because you are excited to apply there. And it is one of the places you've chosen to spend the time and effort to submit an application.
Great. Well, we're going to just frame 2 more questions, which I think will actually speak to many more questions about LBS and then mini presentation. I'd mentioned Emma, our colleague who used to be head of admissions at London Business School. We've done a specific LBS session. And Rachel, I would love you to think about one of the questions about Harvard Business School now giving interviewees the opportunity to connect with an alum. And they say that it doesn't impact the decision. So how you might use that interaction. I'll come back to that in just a second, because as you think about that, Michelle, this broader question about specificity, a particular school, why this school, what you will bring. When you're working with clients, is there a way that you like to help them structure so that, again, they're not going into too much detail, just the right level, and sharing that alignment with their own goals and ambitions?
Yeah, so definitely the alignment to Rachel's point, she said earlier, is if you name the class, that class could be awesome, but what are you going to benefit? How will you benefit from it that will apply to the job you want to get post MBA, to a future leadership role? So I think the components, and not to say the first thing, the second, but it is a focusing on academically, what are you drawn to about that school? So therefore, what do you need to learn, right? Like, what are you missing in your toolkit, as we like to say, right? The skills that I want more depth and understanding within finance, like, right? So understanding classes, the curriculum, and how you'll take advantage of a flexible curriculum, of the case, method. Then it's I will say the clubs, the initiatives is your involvement. And again, alignment with, I am very focused on, let's say, the environment in clean tech, whatever it is. Therefore, clubs, conferences. How would you want to maybe, take part in leading one of the conferences and putting together, or leveraging your network to come and be speakers within a club or a conference? So it's kind of these components about, again, why are you seeking an MBA, and what this specific program offers in terms of your engagement, of your learning. And, let's say the third thing, it could be an alumni piece. It could be the people piece to the global aspect, really shaping your global mindset, and the opportunity at a Wharton to go look at the Penn China Center and take advantage of that. And again, it's specific to you. So again, thinking about what are you really seeking to have your growth opportunities, for your professionally, for your career, but soft skills. Hard skill, the technical skills. So I think there's different components. That's why I think there's no right answer. But when we work with our clients, Rachel and I, we've done this work already, right, in the application. And it's the reminder of what specifically for the school would you like to highlight. And they do forget, like when I'm prepping my client, they're like, oh yeah, and I said, easy. What did you say? And if there was an essay about it, what did you say? And now you have more words to use. So again, to your point, Matt, is to really, and to Rachel's point, you're going 1 to 2 minutes. It's really what areas do you want to focus on? And showing that you've done your research outreach, that you talk to the head of the healthcare management club, and that this is like they do their treks, they do that. Does that make sense? Like, you're really getting into the depths and the weeds of it, and that just shows your enthusiasm that this is something you are going to take advantage of, all those opportunities. Right.
Yeah. Well, taking advantage, perhaps for our final question, Rachel, this idea of HBS giving up the opportunity to connect with alum reminds me a little about the optional essay. It's there as an opportunity, and take advantage of it, whether it's impacting the decision or not. What a great chance to connect with somebody from the school.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful that they're doing that. It helps to level the playing field with people who may not have connections or may not know that you can just call up a student that's in a club or head of a club and reach out to them and talk to them. So first of all, I think if they say it's not going to affect the admissions decision, then believe them. This is there as an opportunity for you. Don't ask in any way, shape, or form, or expect your alumni contact to advocate on your behalf to the admissions office. That would be seen as kind of an inappropriate request. So make sure to stay very clear of requesting that in any way. But really use them as a resource to help you understand the questions that you really do have about the school. Help you understand, if they're recent alum, what are the clubs, activities, classes that they took that really, mattered to them or that you might be interested in. If they're a little bit older, you can still sort of learn from them what they got from their experience. And you can also ask them, what makes the school special? What's unique? What do they think is different about it versus other schools? What really stood out to them? All those questions, just go for it and really learn everything you can from this alumni resource that they're giving to you.
Well, both of you went for it, and all of us had so much to learn. For James, that has the question about the exec MBA, we have colleagues that were associate deans at 5 of the top US schools, 3 of the top European schools. So please reach out so that we can talk about your own experience. and applying to some of the top MBA programs. We've covered so much. That is testament to both of you. So Michelle, Rachel, thank you for an amazing, amazing session. I have to go and find that person to talk to, and I'll make it feel like an interview. It really fired me up, and I hope all of the viewers, whether you're with us live, everybody has stayed, or if you're catching this video on YouTube, typical of a Fortuna Masterclass, please reach out, and we'd love to talk to you about your next steps. Michelle and Rachel, thank you so much.
Thank you. Good luck,
Thank
everyone.
you. Goodbye.